Hello, I'm Angela Davis, and I wanted to talk to you about my personal experience with a type of therapy called internal family systems. I've been practicing it as a consumer individually in groups and learning groups for the past 10 plus years, and I have found it extremely helpful. I've been in and out of therapy for years and years and years. And before I found my IFS therapist, I felt really lost in therapy. I did not understand what was expected of me. I felt like I felt in the rest of my life that I was just guessing and trying to figure it out and going around kind of blindly bumbling and stumbling and not really understanding what was happening. And internal family systems was the first modality of therapy that told me that I actually have a self that has certain qualities, and those qualities are calm, curious, compassionate, centered, creative, clear, as in clear-minded, confident, connected to yourself and others, creative, did I already say that? Centered. So there are 8 C's. You can look them up online. So that is your core self that you have. And then on top of your core self, you have parts. And that's where the fun work and all of the work happens, is with your parts. So parts, what do I even mean by that? I think most of us are familiar with the concept of an inner child and an inner critic. Those are terms that are very popular within our culture right now. But it really goes deeper than that, So you might, let's say you're buying a car and you say, ooh, part of me wants to buy this nice red Jaguar here because I would look really nice in it. Or part of you might say, you know what, my family needs a van and we just really need something to haul all of our stuff and to keep things going on our trips, things like that. And then part of you might say, you know what, I need something that goes fast and can haul the family. I'm just gonna get one of these mid-range sedans here, gray, of course. So, anytime you're saying, well, part of me, then you are acknowledging that you have parts within yourself. You have these voices that have distinct personalities and wishes and desires, and sometimes those voices will create inner conflict and you're really in turmoil over what to do about something, and you have to make a decision based on all kinds of things, your values, your wants, your desires, what's going on at the time. So your parts carry a lot of wisdom and are necessary in your life. Unfortunately, parts can start to have extreme roles in your system and become part of your day-to-day functioning in a way that might not be the healthiest for you. So if you've ever been out driving on the highway and you've noticed that the traffic slows and there's no wreck, there's no reason for it to slow, but as you get up closer to the bottleneck, you see that there was a wreck and there might be, a fender there, or one more cop car is still cleaning up the mess, or one car is pulled over the side. So there's no big wreck in the middle of the road to cause a bottleneck or to cause traffic to slow that much. But it does, because the highway remembers and those traffic patterns remember, and people are trying to be safe and protect that accident that happened. So if you think about, our systems are like that too. All of us have experienced some stuff, some stuff has gone down in our lives. And if you think about, our psyches are like that too. If something happens to us, we remember it. And so parts of us are going to slow down around where that accident was. So for us, it could be around relationships, or even a place, or a certain job, or somebody reminds us of somebody, or a certain kind of friendship or hobby. There might be something that that is still tender, and you have these protections formed around it, so like a blister, right? So to keep using that analogy, there are different types of parts in internal family systems. The big parts that kind of run the show are the exiles. And exiles are the most tender, most vulnerable, most sensitive parts of ourselves. They're the ones that are our child selves. They carry our childhood wounds. They're our inner children. So they have that tenderness, also the playfulness and the beautiful innocence and zest for life that we want to carry with us into adulthood. Unfortunately, they can also kind of come out and run the show in ways that are not so healthy. I mean, even adults will still say, well, you can't make me, or, you know, act in ways that are stubborn, or, you know, I'm not doing that. Childish. We can act childish, and so our inner children are running the show in that situation. Our parts. So if you think about the wreck, all right, there are going in IFS language. There are two different types of protectors that come to deal with the feelings of the exiles. The exiles are fearful because their feelings are big. They have big needs and big sadness and big, petulance. So the managers come and clamp down on that and say, nope, we're not doing that. So we need management in our life, right? We need our managers to pay our bills and to get us up on time to go to work and to meet the responsibilities of our job. So our managers are important, but they carry extreme roles when they say, I'm never going to feel the feelings of this exile. And they can kind of be cold and not, and they can be cold in dealing with other people, which means that that's how they are in dealing with themselves and their own exiles. They can be numb. The managers are the ones that might numb out with hobbies or, mindless scrolling on the internet, things like that. And they are the ones that have to have a lot of control. So then there's the firefighters, and the firefighters have the same job as the managers. The manager's job is to keep the exiles and their big feelings from flooding the system and having somebody feel overwhelmed and just be in a pool of despair, right? So the firefighters go the opposite way. Instead of clamping down and having too much control, firefighters lose control. And so this is where things like addictions come in, and too much shopping when you don't have the money, too much drinking, staying up too late at night, not taking care of yourself, eating too much. Firefighters will cause some damage to themselves and others with their acting out. So managers act in, clamp down, firefighters act out, go crazy, right? So how do you deal with all of this? Everybody's got all of these different parts inside of themselves. And my friends and I who still do IFS work together will call each other up and say, help, I'm having a parts party here. I don't know what's going on. And so the work of IFS is to go through a process of separating from those parts. And the belief in IFS is that all of your parts carry wisdom for your system. So earlier I mentioned the example of the inner critic. In IFS, the inner critic would be welcome. You would never see an article that says, get rid of your inner critic. In IFS, you would say, all right, turn toward your inner critic, build a relationship with them, and find out what it is that they're trying to protect, what they're afraid of, why they're acting in such an extreme way. You know, ask them to tone it down. You can't teach yourself by shaming yourself. You can't learn anything about life if you are being in shame all the time. So, you know, working with your inner critic, you know, your inner critic might say, well, you really did mess up on this situation. And, you know, your wise adult self can come on board and say, yes, I did. And this is what I'm doing to avoid making that same mistake again and to show that I've learned from it. So, once you separate from your parts and are able to practice, because it is a practice and it's not a perfect practice, once you're able to practice being in self energy and talking to your parts, it does start to get easier, and then you have self-awareness. And at the end, it's not like your triggers ever go away. You still have your parts. That accident still happened, but the energy around it is definitely toned down, and you have a lot more confidence that you can use your parts to grow your life. So, for example, if you have a teenage part that comes out, I know I do, I have a lot of big teenage parts. You know, your teenager, if they get mad about something and they cuss, you know, you're not in self. Cussing somebody out is not self energy. But if your teenager has some upset about something, chances are that upset is incredibly valid. And so you can come from a place where you are speaking for the teenager and saying, you know what, I'm feeling really frustrated that you said this to me, and you know, I'd like to talk about it, or whatever situation is that you need to resolve. So in that way, you're still using your teenage energy, but you're doing it in a way that's adult. So anyway, I know this is just a Cliff Notes version. Believe it or not, there's a lot more. And you can go on to the Internal Family Systems website, selfleadership.org, and read more. There are trainings all over the world, and there are tons of books and articles and resources. One thing that I like to recommend, if you are not so sure about this part stuff and you're thinking, oh, does that mean that I have dissociative identity disorder or that something's wrong with me? Watch the movie Inside Out. A lot of people really love that movie. A lot of IFS practitioners love that movie because it acknowledges that we all have parts inside of us. And so your parts carry your feelings for sure. And you know, they're a lot more complex than we think. It does not mean that you have an dissociative identity disorder. And it's just rich and satisfying to learn who you are. And once you see the world this way, you can't unsee it. I highly recommend it. I was finally able to find some therapy that worked for me, a therapist that was a complete godsend. And you know, it may not be for you. That's fine. I love it. I hope that you will I hope that you enjoyed this information and that you'll consider it. So have a great day. Goodbye.